Do you think one mind is better than many? Neither do we. A University of Chicago Booth School of Business MBA is for curious and collaborative people who value different perspectives and ideas. Chicago Booth takes pride in empowering and being empowered by women of diverse backgrounds. We believe that fostering an inclusive community creates an environment of analytical, open minded inquiry and produces knowledge with enduring impact. Learn more today at chicagobooth.edu/elevate. Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Elevate Podcast. It's me, Megan Oliver, your host. I'm so excited to have you back today. Let's go ahead and tell you what is going on at Elevate this week. So just to let you know, we're a little light on events this week. We're kind of giving you some time to recover from those crazy summer months, summer vacations, summer everything. So no roundtables or community circles this week. But I do want to shout out two of our chapter events coming up. Our Seattle chapter is hosting an in-person Rose Garden happy hour and picnic, which sounds so fun. So fun. That's going to be today, Wednesday. And then Atlanta is going to be hosting a virtual monthly breakfast today, also on Wednesday. So be sure to go to both of those. I'm so excited. I'm so jealous of Seattle's weather. I've heard it's been beautiful. As you all know, I'm in the DFW area and it has not been beautiful down here. So anybody in the Seattle area, go live vicariously for me and go to the lovely happy hour and picnic. So today on the podcast, I'm so excited for the guest. It's another one of my interviews. It's with Laura Tedesco, who is the Chief Strategy Officer and Chief Marketing Officer at the Honey Pot Company. I mentioned this in the interview, but this is one of the rare instances where I get to talk to somebody who represents a brand that I actively use, I actively love. If you don't know about them yet, you're going to know about them come this interview. So cool. We talk about everything under the sun. We definitely just clicked pretty much as soon as it started. So let's go ahead and get to that interview now. Hi, welcome Laura Tedesco to the Elevate Podcast.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here.
I am thrilled to have you. We were saying this in the pre-call, and we'll get to your background in just a second, but I did say that it is not often that I get to interview somebody on the podcast who works for a company whose product I personally use.
Yes, and thank you for using it. It is, and we'll talk more about this, but hands down, the single best brand out there, full stop. So I'm so happy you've had an experience with it, and hopefully more of your audience members will also have the opportunity to learn more about the brand and what we stand for. But the Honey Pot is an incredible, incredible brand.
Yes, I adore it. I'll get into more. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about the brand in just a bit. We're going to talk about it plenty. But first, I want to start out by asking Laura, how did you get to where you are in your career today?
Yeah, great question. So I kind of happened into, I would say, the marketing and brand space. I had a particularly amazing college professor who kind of pointed me in the direction of brand and marketing strategy. And so I started my career in consulting, focusing on marketing and branding. And I worked at a firm that was kind of generalist. So I got to experience all different kinds of industries, everything from healthcare to technology to consumer. And the consumer projects that I worked on were the ones that I really gravitated towards. So, at one point I had Disney as a client, I had Walmart as a client, I had Bayer as a client. So these were just really fun, interesting projects that connected back to humans. And so that was sort of the first inkling for me that the work I really enjoyed was rooted in providing joy and solutions to people. And so from there, I went back and got my MBA, was able to graduate from Kellogg and start my career in brand management at Colgate-Palmolive. So Colgate-Palmolive, amazing purveyor of wonderful brands, toothpaste, hand soap, body wash. And the key theme for me in being at Colgate was the brands that sat under that umbrella were all brands that fundamentally help people to live better lives. Most, if not every single person will benefit from the use of soap or the use of a toothbrush or a toothpaste. And so for me, the ability to work on products that were fundamentally helping improve the lives of humans was really important. And in fact, that sort of set me down the path of making sure that every brand I would ever work on would be one that could fundamentally help humans. Spent a while at Colgate, had a great experience, worked in our innovation group, coming up with our new products, worked in our global strategy group, thinking about our brands internationally, and then worked in brand management and owned the P&L for a number of different brands. Great experience. And as I started to think about the future of my career, was really interested in getting into an environment where I could make a really big impact for humans. And in doing so, started to explore some options outside of Colgate and found my way to a company called Zarbee's Naturals, which is a leading kids and baby supplement company that provides cough syrup solutions as well as some other wellness solutions. That was an incredible step because effectively I was able to move into an earlier stage company. We were private equity backed, which means essentially we had investors that were helping us to grow so that we could scale and provide solutions to even more parents. And so, really incredible opportunity to be someplace that was mission driven, to work on a brand that was delivering products to new parents. And there's, very, very lower, very little that is harder to do than become a new parent. And it's certainly a very vulnerable spot in people's lives, both for parents and babies. So it was really incredible to be able to work on products that were ultimately helping humans who were going through that transition into parenthood. And absolutely adored my time there, loved the impact we were able to make. The brand grew like crazy and really serviced our consumers so well. And so at some point, though, it was time to move on, and I am so happy I found kind of the perfect role in my role at the Honey Pot Company. So I serve as our chief strategy and marketing officer, and I've been with the brand for a number of years now, and it is just the best job I have ever had. So I absolutely love it. The products themselves are incredible. The team is remarkable. And the impact we're having for our community and for culture overall is just so incredible. And so, the very best job I've ever had. And I'm excited to tell you more about it.
Oh, I am so excited to hear about it. So, do you want to, before we go on, tell our listeners a little bit about who and what Honeypot is, how it was born, because it has such a unique creation story, and what it does.
Absolutely. So the Honey Pot is the first complete vaginal wellness company in the country. And so the Honey Pot came about in 2012 when our incredible co-founder, CEO, and chief innovation officer, Beatrice Dixon, was suffering from an 8-month long bacterial vaginosis infection. So for anyone who has ever experienced that, it is incredibly uncomfortable. It can be very embarrassing. At least that's what society would tell you it should be. And it's very, very uncomfortable and unpleasant. And so, B was searching high and low for solutions to help address this reoccurring BV. She was taking antibiotics. She was, changing her diet. She was doing everything that she could, and nothing seemed to work. One night, her maternal grandmother came to her in a dream and said, "I've seen your suffering. Write down this list of ingredients, put them together, and that is the solution you've been seeking." And so the incredible thing is B had never met her maternal grandmother. She had passed before B was born. So it was this incredible moment of not only meeting such an important ancestor, but also that ancestor serving up such an incredible solution to a challenge that B was facing. So B woke up, wrote down all the ingredients, put them together, and that is the basis of the first product that was launched under the Honey Pot, which is our normal foaming intimate wash. And so that was back in 2012. Spent a number of years working through the right formulas, sharing them with sort of her community and her friends and family who were experiencing some challenges of their own, to get great product feedback to make the formula even better. And ultimately, what that meant was that B was able to create this incredibly efficacious formula that used plant derived ingredients, so ingredients that you would know from nature, in order to balance pH. And now, the interesting thing is infection and odor and imbalances. That all centers around pH imbalance within your vagina. And so, if you can keep your pH balanced, it lowers the chance that you'll end up with an infection. Or at times when you have your period or you have sex, there are things that can alter your pH balance. And so having a proactive vaginal wellness routine that rebalances your pH is really critical for that overall sort of health and wellness of your vagina and your pH balance. So B kind of understood this. And so as she was introducing the wash into the marketplace, it was doing remarkable things for all of the humans who were using it. So in 2017, B got a phone call to see if she could come in and share the Honeypot brand with Target. And so how did the buyer find out about B and reach out to the Honeypot? She had actually heard of the brand through some of the humans had been using the products that B had been sharing over the previous years. The buyer was able to sort of hear firsthand how well these products worked, what an incredible benefit they provide. And so she actually reached out to Beatrice to have B and the team come in to sort of pitch the business to Target. And so B, being the incredibly savvy person that she is, also understood that, when you have that opportunity, you go in and you put everything on the table. And so she and her co-founder, Cy Gray, went in with not only the foaming, intimate foam and washes, but also intimate wipes, as well as our incredible herbal menstrual pads, which have essential oils that provide like a cooling effect. So effectively what B and Cy were able to do was bring a full portfolio of products into Target that addressed many of the challenges that a human with a vagina might face. Not all of them, but many of them. So that effectively meant that the Honeypot was the first brand that crossed the feminine hygiene and feminine wellness aisle. Most brands prior to that had either focused on periods or focused on hygiene, but no one was doing both. And so it created this really unique opportunity for B to be able to bring the Honeypot into Target in a massive way, in a way that helped address the holistic human and make sure that not only was the Honeypot servicing the daily needs that you might need through a wash and a wipe, but that also the Honeypot was there at that time of the month when you had your period. So this was really, really unprecedented at the time. And so, fast forward from 2017 to now, we've expanded. We're currently in Target, Walmart, CVS, Walgreens. We have products that span personal and body care. We have our period care brand. So in addition to our organic top sheet herbal pads, we've got tampons, we've got menstrual cups, which are highly sustainable. We've got supplements that help with vaginal microbiome. We have incredibly beautiful cosmetic vulva creams and a boric acid suppository, as well as kind of the first ever over-the-counter anti-itch product that includes herbal plant-derived ingredients. And then, of course, we have our sexual wellness business. So we've launched a number of new items this year to really expand that part of the portfolio. So our goal is to provide kind of holistic wellness inside and out to our community through plant-derived ingredients and efficacious solutions.
There is so much I want to pull out from that. One of the first things I want to say is I loved, you said way early on when you were describing Bee's experience that she was embarrassed because society tells you it should be embarrassing. And I love that phrasing because it's just a bodily function.
It is.
Things happen.
Yes.
And we have to take the shame out of it.
100%. And that's the interesting thing. Like, as the Honeypot was emerging, the category convention, the norm in the convention was shame. And that was not only the way that people were feeling, but that was what they were being told to feel. And so from very early ages, you were taught to be ashamed of our vaginas. And we really shouldn't be. To your point, it's something that 51% of the population owns. It's something that, very natural things are happening, whether it's odor or discharge, that's all normal. And to the extent that we can normalize it and destigmatize the vulva and the vagina, it unlocks the ability for all of us to learn more about our own personal wellness. And so that is at the center of everything we are trying to do as a brand.
Yes, 100%. And I also want to tack on to, you mentioned the menstrual pads.
Yes.
That is where I come in terms of what I've used. I want to shout out my sister-in-law, Bree, who's amazing. I love her. I was over at her and my brother's house just visiting, and I realized I'd started my period. And she said, "Oh, okay, I'll set it's fine. I've got some pads. I'll set you up with Honeypot." And I was like, what is Honeypot? Like because I had previously used like your major brands, that you see across the board. I had basically used, I think, a lot of Kotex, a few others that were, generic Walmart brand, generic Target brand, what CVS brand, any of those. And I said, "What is Honey Pot? Like, I've never heard of this." She goes, "You've never heard of this? Oh, I love it." And I will say she did not tell me enough about the cooling element.
Yep.
Which I think because she thought it'd be funny. I thought I was having an allergic reaction. I was like, "Am I having a reaction?" She's
Oh,
like, "No,
no.
that's not it." She goes, "No, that's what it does. I just wanted to see how you'd react."
So you're not the only one.
Yeah.
So I guess
was,
just broad disclaimer, we have these incredible organic cotton cover pads that have herbal essential oils infused into them that create a cooling sensation that, before you've tried them, you probably wouldn't even think you needed that in your life. But once you try them, you're like, how did I ever live before these? And so that cooling sensation is just so soothing and lovely. But it's kind of funny that your sister-in-law sort of did that to tease you or whatnot, because I think I always lead with, you're going to feel something, that's what's meant to happen, because it definitely, if you're not expecting it, is a little bit tough.
Yeah, because I was like, "What is going on? Like, what's happening down there?" I never felt anything like that down there. But then I was like, "Oh." And when she told me, I was like, "Oh, okay." But now that I know it's coming, like, because when you don't know that it's coming, it's kind of hard to relax.
Yes.
But once you know it's coming, you're like, "Oh, here it comes."
Here
and
it
I'm
comes.
like, every time I use them now, I'm just like, "Yes." So I won't buy any other ones because I'm like, why would I? This is the best one.
Oh, well, thank you for that. I think, what's interesting to me too, and you kind of hit on this, but like vaginal care and periods in particular are so generational. We use the products and the techniques that our parents used, or our aunts used, or kind of those who taught us about our vaginal wellness used. And so it's really energizing to us as the Honey Pot to think about the fact that we have this ability to impact this whole generation of humans and give them a better for you option. And then what we find is, because many people have the same experience you have, where it's just such an incredible, different but amazing experience, then we have people who are influencing their sisters, their peers, their moms. Like my mom uses the Honey Pot now. She also grew up using a conventional brand, as did I. And when I started working here and I exposed her to the products, she's using them now. So it's just really incredible to have the ability to touch generations, because this space is so generationally focused.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to also shout out, I am a cisgender woman. I, identify with the sex I was assigned at birth, but I am a member of the LGBTQ community. Podcast listeners know that I'm bisexual, so I'm surrounded by tons of LGBTQ people. So I love that you consistently say things like humans with vaginas.
Yes.
Like acknowledging that women are not the only ones who have vaginas. Not only women have periods, and not all women have periods.
Yes.
And that when you said, not everyone experiences the same periods, we're just going to get very real on this podcast.
I love this. I love it.
Yeah. I always had a very heavy flow. I got my first period when I was 10.
Wow.
And had no idea what it was. And my mother, of course, sat me down and explained the birds and the bees to me. But I was 10 and I've always had very heavy periods. I'm now, thankfully, I've been on birth control for a while, so I don't really get them that much anymore. But when I do, I use Honey Pot. But it's so strikingly different. Whereas my sister was a much later bloomer. I think she was 14 or 15, which was more along the lines of what my mother was. So I was more along, my dad's side of the family tends to get them very early. My mom's side of the family tends to get them very late. And just like, there's such a wide variety of experiences. And it's just so sad that society stigmatizes like talking about it. Yes. Whereas my sister-in-law can just joke, and of course my mother and sister and I can all joke between us that we can just be like, "Oh yeah, mine was heavy this month, mine was whatever," and my sister-in-law can try to play a joke on me where like, she's like, "Oh yeah, I knew you were gonna have a reaction, and I didn't tell you."
But I love that, because I mean, we didn't grow up talking about our periods that freely. It was sort of very cloaked in shame, and it happened and you kept it a secret and you hid from it. And it's really exciting to me that, we are part of a generation, and it's certainly kind of like up and coming humans. Like the openness creates a big difference. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and she's asked me about periods, and I've talked to her about it in a way that a 7-year-old can internalize. And what's incredible about it is that she had zero reaction to it. It was just like, oh, okay, cool. That happens. And that happens because we're talking about it at a young age versus waiting another 5 or 10 years and we're having the conversation. And the fact that we haven't talked about it reinforces the shame. But when you just address it head on from day one, there's no there. It's just, it is what it is. You get a period, you bleed, that's part of life.
Because when you postpone it, it almost becomes, I mean, it certainly becomes a dirty thing,
Yes,
but it also
yes,
becomes a, all my life my body hasn't done this, and all of a sudden my body is bleeding once a month, and I'm
yes,
terrified. What is
yes.
what is happening to me?
100%, 100%. And I think back to your point too on the humans, that's really important to us as a brand. I think part of what the Honey Pot has unlocked is really making sure that we are inclusive in a way that this category has typically not been. And I
Mhm.
think that for us, it's really important that this brand is for everyone. It is meant to be a brand that welcomes people in, that helps kind of our community feel seen, whether it's because they live with extremely heavy flows, or they live with conditions like endometriosis or fibroids, or they live with kind of recurring sort of infections. Like, our goal is to help welcome people into our community through our products, and maybe more important, through the education we provide, so that people feel like they are part of this and they've got the camaraderie of a community supporting them, as opposed to what you said earlier, in terms of like this idea of like, you're on your own, this is a problem, like, don't talk about it. So that's really at the center of everything we're trying to do as a brand.
Yes, let's talk about it. I am one other thing that you brought up that I did not know about Honey Pot, but that makes me very excited, because something that podcast listeners might not know about me, because it doesn't really come up that much in these conversations, is I'm very passionate about sexual wellness
Yes.
and getting, making sure that people know how to be well. What brought about the decision to, expand into sexual wellness for Honey Pot?
Great question. I mean, I think at the core, sexual wellness to us is, it's just very important that we expand what sexual wellness means. I think, for so long, sexual wellness is literally about the moment of sex. And that is a part of sexual wellness, whether it be condoms or lubes, but really the idea of always being well and always being ready for sex, to us, is what the true definition of sexual wellness is. And so certainly there are products and information that can help you in the moment, but equally important, we want to make sure that our community is sexually well, such that they are always ready for sex whenever that might come along. And so for us, a big part of that decision has been to kind of expand the product offering that we have. So we now have this really beautiful intimacy wipe that can be used to clean up either before or after sex. It can be used kind of by any human. So there's no, one specific partner it works for. It can work for everyone. We've introduced a really beautiful hybrid silicone and water lube, which is really important for creating greater inclusion around different types of sexual penetration, or where you're having sex. It's helpful to have a lube that has sort of longer glide. And then this really incredible stimulating serum that's great for clitoral arousal. And so for us, it's about kind of offering the products that, one, help create a greater overall kind of sexual experience, two, expand who's included within our brand, and then three, create the opportunity for us to talk about normalizing sexual health and sexual wellness. Taking, again, sexual wellness is not in some ways stigmatized, but also like there's a certain approach I think is taken to sexual wellness, which can often be like neon colors, like XXL, and that's not very inclusive or very like approachable for many humans. And so our goal is to actually, again, reorient, expand the definition of sexual wellness, include more people in with product and educational solutions that service them and that are tailored to them, and remove kind of this age old legacy approach to the sex aisle.
Yes, absolutely. Because let's just get this out of the way. A majority of humans have sex, and I don't understand this stigma behind it, that it's somehow dirty. We all got here that way. I mean, obviously nowadays with greater advancements in technology, maybe not necessarily all of us got here through sex, but the vast majority of humans that have ever been born have been born through sexual reproduction. And I don't know why stigma of dirtiness to it, the same way that periods do, which are just as important to bringing life to this world. And so I love all of that you said, but I also love especially what you said about the branding that sometimes is used on sexual wellness products. Walking into the sexual wellness section of a store can be so intimidating,
Yes.
especially your first time. You're like, I don't know what any of this is, and I don't identify with any of this. And it's so those bright neon colors, and you're like, I don't know what XL is. I don't know what anything like.
Yeah.
What am I doing? And it can freak people out.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I think meeting people where they are is so important because if that neon branding speaks to you, fabulous.
Yeah.
But it's not going to speak to everyone. And a lot of people are going to be really intimidated, especially when I had never kind of thought of this, but like the branding on products for periods is so radically different than the branding on products for sex, even when they're both for the same body part at times.
Yes. You're absolutely right,
And
Megan. And
then
what's
there's
interesting, what we love is, I think there's something around in the sexual wellness aisle offering something that feels like sophisticated and inclusive. And then, you're familiar with our menstrual pads, but all of our
Mhm,
packaging, we use rich, beautiful colors. Like, we
mhm.
don't want anyone to feel like they have to shy away and hide the products that they need for their vaginas. They're just necessities. They are amazing solutions. And like color plays an important role, I think, in normalizing. And it's such an interesting comparison that you draw in terms of the aisles and how colorways are used. But our goal is to make every human with a vagina who's using our product feel good and confident about the fact that they've got a vagina. And again, society just doesn't set us up to do that. So it makes the work of the honeypot all the more exciting and all the more enriching.
It absolutely does, and it absolutely makes a difference. If anybody is listening out there, let me tell you something. The first time when I was probably a teenager that I used another brand's pads, but they had as simple as like differently colored wrapping
Yeah.
from each other. It made it feel a little bit more fun, and it made it feel a little bit less like, oh, I'm using. It made
Yes.
it feel less like I'm using a medical product
Yeah, exactly.
because it's that time of the month. It's like, hey, this is a thing that I'm doing. Why not have a
Yeah.
little fun with it? Oh, I'm going to grab the pink one today. I'm going to grab the yellow one today.
Yeah, feel good about it, absolutely. No, I think that that's exactly right. I think our goal is just to arm people with information and confidence. And if we're doing that at the end of the day, then we're doing our job as a brand. So
Absolutely. Well, I could talk about this all day. One thing I do want to get to before we get to our lightning round, which I'm very excited for, is you talked about always looking for jobs that improve the lives of humans, which I absolutely adore. What advice would you have for somebody else in your footstep, following in your footsteps, who maybe necessarily is like, I also want to find mission driven work or passion driven work, but it's so hard. What's your advice for finding something that you're passionate about?
oh, that's a great question. I always think about jobs a little bit like I thought about my dating life before I was married, and that like every job helps you know a little bit more about like what you do like and what you don't like. And that was kind of the same way I approached relationships, candidly. So I think for me, the way I've gotten to where I am is by kind of taking that step forward into a role, and every role trying to make sure that that role was delivering more of the spaces and the areas I know that I did gravitate towards, and at least optically seemed like it would have fewer of the spaces that I actively knew I did not want to pursue. And so I think a lot of, or the advice I would give is to, really think about your experiences and what have you loved about each experience? What have you not liked about each experience? And help that inform your next step. And then also think about what you care about in your life. Like I always say that the honeypot and this role is the best job I've ever had because it doesn't feel like a job. It feels like what I would want to be doing in my free time every day. And so I do think trying to tap into what you personally care about and are passionate about outside of a work environment and let helping that guide kind of where you take your career is really helpful. I think we're also in an interesting like jungle gym world where it's no longer as though you just climb up the corporate ladder in a very direct way. I think careers now are very much so built by kind of moving kind of laterally and then up and then laterally and then up and then up and then laterally and then maybe, you know, a different direction. And I think it's those experiences that help create, a greater ability to focus in on what you really care about doing, and give you a robust set of experiences that will make you successful wherever you end up. And so I think it's a lot of like thinking about how you feel personally, what you're personally passionate about, how you can hone in on the jobs that embody as much of that as possible, and then keeping an open mindset in terms of what those steps look like to get to the end goal.
Oh, yes, absolutely. All of the above. So we're going to move into our lightning round now.
Okay.
These are short little questions. I'm not going to ask you all of them, but just some of them. You can answer in one sentence or less. Most people don't. I certainly didn't when I did these.
Okay.
So just whatever you're feeling the answer, just let's go with that. We're going to start with the controversial one. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Hard no.
Oh my God. For the first time in this interview, we're going to have to disagree.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, maybe if we have more time at the end, I would love for you to sell me on pineapple on pizza. I am a hard no on that one.
All right. Here's my very quick 5-second sell. It's so sweet. It adds to the flavor so much, and it like sucks up all of the like juices in the perfect way. And it's like an explosion in your mouth of like all of the flavors that you love from pizza. And it's so good with pepperoni specifically. Next time you get a pizza, get pepperoni and pineapple on it, even if it's just one slice.
All right, Megan.
It's
That is
so
my
good.
commitment to you is I will try it. I will definitely keep
Yes.
an open mind and try it.
Yes, it's so good. And I'm sure there's people listening right now that are yelling yes and no to these different. Alrighty, less controversial. Would you rather explore outer space or the bottom of the ocean?
Ooh, that's a good one. Outer space. I think like the limitless idea of outer space is really appealing to me. And not to say that the bottom of the ocean isn't, broad and vast, but there's something about just everything that's, out there. It really appeals to me. So I would say outer space.
If you could time travel, where's the first place you would go?
Oh, that's a good question. I would go back to my childhood. I was so fortunate. I grew up in a big family with lots of love and support, and it was just an incredible experience. I had a lot of extended family who lived nearby that I spent, all of my time with, and we didn't have everything by any means, but we had each other and we had a lot of love, and that was such a wonderful way to grow up. And so it really shaped kind of who I am today and how I parent. Honestly, I have a 5 and a 7-year-old, and it's really influenced the way I think about being a parent and the relationship I want to have with my kids, and the relationship I want them to have with my parents and my in-laws in order to like continue on that sort of generational, just support. And so I would go back and do it all over again because it was really wonderful. And I feel like I have that perspective now of exactly how wonderful it was. And so I would love to experience it again.
Oh, I love that. I would love to go back to like kindergarten when they had like mandatory nap times,
Oh,
and I
no.
didn't want to do it. And I'm like, what's wrong with you?
I know that exactly. My daughter is in kindergarten, and occasionally she'd be like, "I don't want to go to school," and I'm like, "Okay, I'll go.
Yeah,
I'm happy to go."
Yeah, I have a my brother and his fiance just welcomed my first niece, and
Congrats.
so yeah, oh, it's so exciting. Yeah, she's 6 months, and I was saying literally yesterday to them, I was like, it's going to be so exciting to see somebody go through school again. Where they're
Yeah.
like learning about. They're like they come home and they're like, today I learned about George Washington. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's so cool. Like you've never heard of George Washington. You've never heard of the 50 states before. Today you learned about the 50 states. And
Yep.
it's so cool to see people going through that process.
Yes, and then the connecting the dots around how it all fits together. I agree. It's really wonderful to see them have that experience.
100%. What is a skill you wish you had?
Oh, I wish I knew more languages. It's something that I speak English and I try really hard to speak Spanish, but I would say it's not something that comes naturally. And I really wish I had more languages in my repertoire. And so that's just such a, I think, important, valuable skill and thing to know. And it's something that I wish I had.
Same here. What is the most used app on your phone?
Well, if I'm being honest, it's probably Instagram, which I can partially blame on work, because it is, a big part of what I do. At one point, a few years ago deleted all of my social apps, in an effort to like, be less reliant on them. And I lasted like 3 hours because I realized that like for work, I need to have access to all of these apps. So
Yeah.
probably from a if I factor in work and play, it's Instagram. I think if it's just personal, I do a lot on the Libby app. I'm a big audiobook person. I try really hard to read books. It's hard to find the time. And so a few years ago, I just kind of gave into the audiobook phenomenon. And it's been really game changing because it allows me to feel like I'm continuing to better myself through quote unquote reading, but it's done in a way where I can actually make it happen. So I think Libby is probably the one that I'm using the most.
I love that. I have yet to get into audiobooks, but I know that they are like all the craze now. I still like reading physical ones, but like I'm not the type where I'm like, that doesn't count as reading. Audiobooks 100% count as reading.
I appreciate that because if they didn't, I would
Yeah.
be not
Oh
reading.
no. No, those people were just those people. I fight anybody who tells me that audiobooks or Kindle like isn't reading. I'm like, it is just as much reading.
It is. It absolutely is.
Yeah. What sport would you compete in if you were at the Olympics?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um,
It can be like what realistic sport, like what you think you can actually do, or what dream sport you would do. Either one.
all right. I'll go ahead and say I cannot run 26.2 miles, but I would love to do the marathon because I do love running recreationally. Again, not marathon length, but just recreational. I love being outside. And there's something cool about the Olympics obviously happening in a different city every time. And so if you think about being able to like compete in a race like that and run through a city or a town in a different part of the world every few years, it just sounds so cool.
That it's so true. The next one's going to be the next Olympics are in Paris, and I'm like that marathon is going to be so cool to watch.
Oh,
Just running
amazing.
through all of the like sites of Paris because I think they intentionally like put a lot of the sites of Paris in there, and I'm like that is just so brilliant.
Yes, so smart, so smart. So yeah.
Yeah. So second to last question: best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Ooh. Well, this is not given to me personally, but I believe it was Eleanor Roosevelt said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your permission," which is something I heard when I was a teenager and just really gravitated towards because I think it's very easy to doubt yourself or to allow how others perceive you to infiltrate how you feel about yourself, and it's such a natural thing. And that quote just resonated so much with me because it was such a reminder that like it takes work, but I can be in control of how I view myself, and that nobody else, regardless of what they might say, can actually influence that. Now, the reality of doing that is obviously, much more difficult than the simplified like resolve to, not feel
Yeah.
inferior based on what anyone else says. But for me, that's been like a really important piece of how I've thought about continuing to build self confidence and lean into the things that matter to me. And then the other advice that I got as I was preparing for to go out on maternity leave with my first child was, and I recognize that this is something that is not possible for everyone, but I think the advice I got was to the extent you can make sure you have a child care system in place that allows you to continue to focus on your job while you're at your job is very helpful. And again, that's not available to everyone. And so I by no means, say this without acknowledging that. But I think for me, it's allowed me to find a job that I love and do what I love throughout the day. My nanny is like a godsend. I couldn't do this without her. While also, being a parent. And I think that, again, it's so hard to balance both. But to me, it was really good advice because it made me think about the fact that, investing in someone who can help me at home means that I can continue to invest myself in my career. And the beauty of the honeypot is we have such like a family approach to work. And we also, as leaders, have this incredible opportunity to say, what is the culture that like we wish we had or that we want to facilitate, and then we have the freedom to just go do that. And so now as my kids are a little bit older, like they get home from school at 3 and I work from home most days, and they come in at 3 o'clock, and whomever I'm meeting with, they say hello, and they know that the rule is, you can come in and sit with me, you have to be wearing clothing, and you have to say hello and then be respectful and quiet because this is a meeting. but they can feel part of my job. And I wouldn't be here today if I didn't have an incredible support system as they were first being born, that allowed me to continue to focus on my career in a certain way. So again, I think that's been very helpful for me. And obviously, I do recognize not, childcare is a challenge for many people. But I think to the extent that you can find the system and the support system to help you continue to focus on your career, if that's what you want to do, it could be very, very meaningful and fruitful longer term.
Absolutely. And we are at the very end, so I'm going to get to our very last question, the thing that I always wrap up with, which is, what is one thought that you would want to leave with our listeners?
Be kind to yourself. I think, that's rooted in a lot of what we're doing at the Honey Pot in terms of kind of unlocking shame and stigma that so many of us have just been taught to internalize. And I think at the end of the day, taking care of yourself and being kind to yourself is really important in everything in life. And so just be kind to yourself, appreciate what makes, you individually amazing, and try to focus your energy there, versus, beating yourself up or being hard on yourself. Whatever you're doing, you're probably doing an amazing job. So just be kind and appreciate that about yourself.
Oh, so good. Let me tell you, I'm the one who makes the social media graphics with all of the quotations from the show, and I'm gonna have such a hard time picking like my favorite ones from this one.
Oh, well, thank you. This has been so great, Megan. I'm so appreciative of you having me on, and it's always fun to talk about the Honey Pot and to talk about, what we're doing as a brand. And I'm so appreciative that you're obviously a user and a fan, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed recording it, because it was a blast and I could not wait to get this one out to you guys. So let's go over our history makers for this week. Rachel Freer became the first Hasidic woman to be a New York State Supreme Court judge. Hillary Sims became the first woman member of the American Brass Quintet. Wendy Guevara became the first trans woman to win a reality show in Mexico. Tina Young became the first Black woman to serve as postmaster for Sulphur Springs, Texas. Maggie Hockenberry became the first woman to lead the newsroom for Champaign, Illinois CBS affiliate WCIA. And Haley Lombardi became the first woman to serve as officer in charge of the U.S. Coast Guard in Louisville. Congratulations to all of our amazing history makers across the TV world, the world of the military, the world of news. So amazing to see all of these barriers broken. Next week, speaking of barriers being broken, be sure to tune in for Maricella's interview with Minda Harts. If you haven't heard of her, I don't know where you've been. She's amazing. She's an author, public speaker, podcaster, and workplace consultant. She's written 3 best-selling and award-winning books called The Memo, Right Within, and You Are More Than Magic. This is not going to be an interview you want to miss. Definitely tune back in next week, and I'll see you then. Elevate Network drives real results for ambitious women trying to break through the glass ceiling and achieve success in their careers. We offer a platform full of resources and opportunities for growth, all designed to help you unlock your potential. With Elevate support, you can take the first step toward achieving your professional goals. With a supportive community and tangible resources at your fingertips, you're only one step away from reaching your fullest potential. Join us today and take advantage of our 30-day free trial to start building the career of your dreams. Thanks so much for listening to the Elevate podcast. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe, give us 5 stars, and share your review. You can learn all about Elevate membership and all the great things that Elevate Network is doing at our website, www.elevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. Thanks so much, and join us next week.